Welcome to the Brite Commerce Podcast with your host, Judd Dunagan and Carlos Caneja. We have a 4-part series called Web Application Design Breakdown that will walk you through the challenges on quoting, building, and delivering a well-rounded web application.
We are live. How's it going today, Judd?
I'm very good, Carlos. How are you doing?
Doing well. I'm glad it's Friday.
Got these
Finally,
fancy new glasses.
I see those. They're very nice. I like the look.
Blue screens because my eyes hurt every day now.
You're trying to go for that web designer look, huh?
Yeah, it's from trying to edit all of our podcasts, the 2 that we've done over and over again.
There you go. So hey, let's just dive right in. So we are on our 3rd podcast. This is the series we're doing on an app or web design process, all the way from the beginning to the finished product. We are on phase 3, right? Or stage 3, which is the design phase. And this part is when things get excited, right? Because you now have to create an asset that you will have to show to the customer, right? So the idea or the concept that this customer has brought over to you, that you've already charged them or her for, or this company for, you now have to produce something. So this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, and I think it's an important part because if you get the design wrong, then it starts not a positive attitude with the customer, and then the client will be pretty critical from that point forward. So you need to nail it first try. Otherwise, that 30-hour, 40-hour design phase that you quoted flat rate for might turn into 80, and it's because you didn't do the right thing, or you didn't really listen to the customer and what their needs were.
Yeah, so typically on that design phase, we like to start with wireframes. I'm sure you guys do the same thing too, right? You first do a wireframe, and typically what we'll do is, by this point, we'll have a mind map or a site map, right? Which defines what pages the website's going to have, or the application, what the workflow is, what the steps are. It'll define all that. And then from there, we start to essentially, I like to call it carve it out. Carve it out meaning
carve it out. There you go. As long as you don't say make it pop.
I hate
when designers or no, sorry, clients would
it's customers. It's customers. Like, make them pop. Yeah.
Pop doesn't sound like the right term.
That right. There's a meme out there for Photoshop that says file, make pop.
Or can you wow me? You should just be wowed in my presence.
Yeah. What I mean by carving out is this. I'm a huge fan of design, even though I'm not a great designer. I just love design. I love breaking down design.
Carve it out's a good term.
Nowhere near as talented as you are when it comes to actually doing design, right? So I'm the kind of person that appreciates art but cannot draw or paint. Let's put it that way. Right?
You're much more organized than me, so
you can't have it all. Yeah, what I mean by carving out is, if you ever look at the design process for a vehicle before it goes into production and then mass production, they take these clay models, right? And what they do is
it's sculpting it to that perfect.
They carve out the car. They say, hey, this is what the car. First they sketch it, right? But then they actually bring the car to real life.
Yeah, that's true.
Visually, it doesn't work. It's a block of clay. It doesn't work. But at least you can see how the car is going to make you feel, how it's going to look. That's why I say carving it out, right?
And I will say, if you in the discovery process that we talked about prior, that is a key importance to figuring out what the customer wants. So in that phase, that's where you really have to listen. And this phase is what you're going to pretty much say, here's what we're going to create for you based off of what we then take from you. So
why don't we just go ahead and show some examples of what we're talking about, so people can visualize, if you're new to the industry, or you're looking to do some things slightly different, what you should be showcasing or deliverables you should be giving to your customers. If you are in the process of getting an application designed or a website designed, this is the assets or deliverables you should be getting from the company. So Judd, why don't you go ahead and show us the demo on your side?
Sure. I'll bring up a standard kind of wireframe that has dummy content in it, so you can understand a little bit. So basically, after you get the site map, you go through discovery, you get site map, you figure out what the pages are, what the content maybe should be, and brand guidelines and all that. Then you want to start with laying out what the content will need to be, let's say on the homepage. If you don't have copy, like one thing that in the industry I always find is clients sometimes don't have their content on time, so you can use filler, lorem, sum, whatever it
That's
is that
it's
fill
funny.
the
Let me
copy.
just put a pause on you right here because this is a great question that we get all the time, right? When you have customers that are developing a website for the first time, they'll ask you sometimes, what do I start with? Do we start with content or do we start with design? And that's a great idea, right? So that always changes. There isn't a right answer for that. The way we
Yeah,
approach it is, hey, if you have collateral, if you have any content for your type of business or services, give it to us and we'll work the design around that. If you don't, then we'll start to create a template just like what you've put together here so that you could fill in the blanks, and this could change at any time. That's
yeah, or if you go through a discovery phase and you're building out a complete build from a brand all the way to the website, you would go through the process of that customer journey and figuring things out from a marketing perspective, brand persona, which we can provide some content around that. Having a customer journey map can show kind of what the touch points for each of the customer, the stages of
oh, very nice.
customer. There's also building even maybe a persona of who that customer might be that you're trying to target and the goals. And once you have that, then you can build copy around that, as an agency. And I will say that, we use copywriters in certain cases. I typically don't staff copywriters because we don't do we're not in the copywriting business. But man, I'll tell you, Chat GPT beats everybody now. Like every single service I use, from Content Fly to what was forgot the other ones, but they cost me like 1,100, 1,200 bucks, a project or a month, depending on the type of service to get copy. I Chat GPT does it now, and I also cater Chat GPT to style the copy the way that I want it. So you can actually teach it to write it certain ways, title case, if you write this type of copy for this type of person. And I found that it actually generates it, it learns. So anyway, if anybody's looking for a quick, I need to build some copy for a customer, that's one way to do it if you're not a copywriter. Another thing that I just want to add from a copy perspective that really helped me, because I had dyslexia a little bit when I was a kid, and grammar wasn't my big thing. I've been using Grammarly for the last 8 years, and when I say that I became a outstanding copywriter just from using that tool and it repetitively showing me what to do, it's worth every penny, in my opinion, from a great copy tool to use to write. So going back to that, if you can add the copywriting service to your budget, you could, make an additional, I'd say $750 to $1,500 for a small business, and then it goes up there from a larger business. So something to
Yeah,
consider in that discovery
yeah.
phase.
It's
Take that off,
funny.
but
That's something you and I have never talked about, but I've experienced the same. I can attest to the whole Grammarly thing. I've had a paid subscription for the last year. I've been using the free version for a handful of years, but last year I was like, hey, you know what? Let me, with all this new AI stuff coming out, let me go ahead and just get the paid
yeah,
version.
I've used it since
Game
it started.
changer.
Game
Wow, yeah,
changer.
it's a game changer. Yeah, really is.
2014, I think, or whatever it was. It was on AppSumo. I got the free year.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah. It's funny. It's changed the way I write, because I've been writing certain things a certain way for a long time, so it's just kind of ingrained like that in your brain.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I
I'm like,
noticed
oh,
I noticed
it reminded me.
over time, yeah, over time it picks up on those patterns and it says, "Hey, here's how you should say it," and you say to yourself, "Oh,
Yeah,
that got sound more elegant." That is a
absolutely.
much better way to
Great,
say it.
great
So yeah,
tool. I think web designers that weren't big on copy now have that arsenal from AI. That's probably the only thing that
no,
AI
yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah,
I've liked so
it's
far. I think coding, it helps in a lot of ways to start code, but I'm not big into that yet. But copy wise, it was a game changer for me. And also when I do PPC ads, things like that, I've also taught
yeah,
it to really spit out the way I want a PPC ad.
sure,
I did all of my ads for the plugin business.
yeah.
Like it was fast. Like normally something that would take me an hour took 15 minutes using Chat
Yeah, so
GPT.
not to get too far off topic because we're kind of
Yeah.
veering off, but
Okay, so
this is
so going
what are you showing us here?
So that's a buyer persona. So the buyer persona is
Gotcha.
basically the customer that you're going after. By knowing that customer, you will know what to design with. Just how you want to maybe cater the design. So if your customer is mainly male, you're going to design something that's catered towards mainly, a
Yeah.
male. If it's
Yeah.
more
I see.
female, that you would cater towards more of a
Genius. Yeah.
yeah.
It's so funny because I we started creating personas, and again, it's got to have the right budget, right? Because look, you're not
Yeah,
going to
no, this
build
is
a website for $3,000 to $5,000 and start creating personas, right?
yeah,
The budget really has to be there for it, right?
yeah.
We're talking 10, 20, 30K projects for this kind of development.
All right, so this is if you do get a project where you find the brand, because this is another thing when you get into a creative process and someone doesn't really have a brand established, it might be a non-starter, and I look for that before I start a
Yeah,
project, because what will happen in the creative process when you create things, they'll be really picky because they don't even know what they want versus having an established brand, having guidelines
you're
and
right.
everything. So,
Yeah,
so
color
I think
scheme, color. Yeah,
yeah, I try to avoid those like the plague and or produce brand guidelines. In
it's
this case,
it's it's so funny. Logo design, people don't see it as challenging, but it can be
oh,
very,
man,
very
can't
challenging.
you just
You
move
know,
that around and do that?
right,
You can't. You
right,
got to
and
this is
and I
the
think
face of your business that you might scale from being $100,000 a year to 100 million. You can't start bad because you'll be in that process redoing
yeah,
your brand over and over again.
sure.
So
Yeah, no,
yeah,
if you're a
yeah,
serious company, but I think the reason why we hate, I don't want to say we hate doing it, but it's just we know what we're getting into when we do it, right? We know
yeah.
it's going to be a bit of a battle to kind of get the customer to approve something. And the reality is that today's logos are so simple that the customers think that it's an easy process, but to get to that, they don't understand what it took to get to that. They don't understand that it took 5 concepts to narrow it down to 3, to then 1, to get all the approvals, do the
Yeah.
color scheme, right? And that it takes a lot of time, right? Because
Yeah,
it's a big asset to a
it
business.
sure does. You got to go from like a mood board. You got to
Oh,
go
look at, yeah, you really do
options,
it right. Yeah.
do like font studies, and this is version 2. I think I was like at version 7, but
Wow.
once you get like yeah, there's a whole process. So you can get it done at the cheap way, which has like a little stick drawing, or you can have a Picasso, or you can have a Michelangelo, right?
Sure.
But it's going to
Yeah.
go upwards from there. Picasso still
Yeah.
being nice, but honestly, if you look at a Picasso and a Michelangelo, there's no there's a big
Yeah.
difference.
Judd, what do you typically charge for a logo?
So that's a good question. I mean, me, it's I would charge around 1,500 for a logo.
15. Yeah, that's usually what we
And I've
charge.
had people say, "Well, I can go to 99 Designs and get it." Well, go to 99 Designs.
That's what we tell them to. Yeah, that's what we tell
You
them to.
might
Yeah.
get it. Like
Or
you might, but if you want,
right.
like, here's the difference too. We work with more design by committee than we do a single individual small business. So when you got to work and you have levels of approval, that adds up real quick. So you can spend easily 32 hours on 3 days on a logo, just design time, because you're literally going through the process of figuring out what they want, figuring out the colors, figuring out what all that. Then when it gets into the brand, which this would be more of a $3,000 project on my side.
Yeah,
Then
right.
you go
Because you get into brand
stuff.
guidelines.
So
That takes time to put all this together.
you put the copy, you say who the brand is, you talk about the customers, the motivators. You then put the personas together, and then you say you can even do the research, like with Forrester or somewhere about what type of customer, what they're spending. Like you narrow it down to a key, so that way they take that to their marketing side. So, we used to do a lot of marketing, and I don't really want to do much of that anymore because I just, dealing with Google and Facebook, and this, like
Yeah,
when they change their stuff, you get blamed for it. So it's
I know.
literally the worst nowadays to be in the PPC management. But in general, we will hand off what's needed to a PPC manager, a digital marketing manager, so they know exactly what they need to use and what they do. So having brand guidelines is great, that's part of the project. So before starting copy, you want to have brand guidelines, and you would want to have the tone and the voice of that brand.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you
Hey,
shouldn't
Judd,
write
Judd, I
copy.
think, we're diving too much into brand.
Yeah,
Let's
okay,
just
all
kind
right.
of,
So,
this could be brand design could be or brand development could be a podcast on its own.
yeah, so
Let's,
going back, once you have all that all figured out, right? You go
I
do
will, yeah, Judd, let me just interrupt and say that
yeah.
you put me to shame with this stuff. I mean, it's amazing what you've done here. It's very
I,
well done.
well, I've started like as a creative person. My original was doing graphic design way back when. I even helped my mom. She had like a little directory that back in the day we did Xerox. You'd have to put the whole booklet together with the Xerox machine,
Oh, wow.
and then that would go to print. And so I did
Oh,
PageMaker, the very first PageMaker, put it all on her, all her booklets on PageMaker. Next thing you know, she optimized her time. But long story
wow.
short, that was my intro: was print design, printing, to web design, web animation, graduate animation. But anyway, I love website stuff, so that's kind of where I fell. But in this case, with like a wireframe, yeah, this is the part where if you don't have content, you can always move forward. Typically, it's best to have it. What I do is I'll put in certain parts of what I think they might need. So the e-commerce site would have main categories, top products. If they have events or something that might be coming up, you'd add that. So you build that wireframe with the content that would help either merchandise their products or their categories, or help explain their brand and who they are. And it could be as very simple as having a video, and that's it on the homepage, but it could have a lot more, have blog posts, things that you would want. So typically the way I would do the way that I look at the persona as well as the users themselves is that they have preferences. You have a user that might be impulsive, that will just click on the main navigation. Then you have users that might be more visual and click on a hero or a visual image. So I always say that you want to give a user three ways to get to something on the homepage, so that you can cover those different buying personas that are out there. And that gets in more of the psychology thing, which we don't have to jump into, but there is definitely an art to that in itself. So with that, I call this a use case, but it's more of a customer flow. There's tons of terms you could use, but in general, when a customer has maybe three different things on their site, one is maybe booking a call with them, or a product sale, or just a general lead, we'll kind of spell out what the website should do. So the designer will know, okay, I have to, look at these three paths, and I have to make ways for them to get through those paths throughout the website. So then you would go and build out the actual design itself. And then the design, and the way we do it in Figma is that we build out the desktop, the tablet, the portrait view, as well as the mobile. So you don't want to skip that. Most people might skip that, and they might only do a very low budget for a website. We don't.
Sure.
We make sure that we cover that. One, because at the end of the day, if it don't look like that, then there's a problem. So your developer knows exactly what it should look like.
Sure.
It helps your QA process. If your developer doesn't make it look the exact way it should be, then there's a problem with the developer, and you have to work through that in your process for QA. But it really helps us, I think, get through the whole website itself. We also then use a tool called Volley, another AppSumo. I'm gonna I love AppSumo. I'm sorry, I keep pushing.
I've been hearing it for years. I know.
But I use AppSumo a lot because let me see if I can find that one that they're calling. So where you have your, my team members, when they start the design and the wireframe of the site, they can talk about what it is and come up and say, okay, this is what I'm looking at. So we're not getting into development, but that's something we can tie into on the final podcast for this series. But yeah, so wireframe, let me go through here. Sorry, going back to the site. So that's the key thing, I think. So that way you get an approval for the design from start to finish, for the buying experience, the lead flow. So two things you always want to cover if it's an e-commerce site. It's going to be the buying experience from the homepage to category, subcategory, product, shopping cart, checkout. You want to make sure you cover that experience. You don't even have to really cover a lot of main pages and all that. That can be flown in, I think, in a lot of ways, unless the customer is super picky about things looking different.
Sometimes. Yeah,
You
it
could do
depends.
one, yeah. So, and typically, I think you might do more creative projects like that. To be honest, I love being creative, but I think I fall more into the e-commerce buying. I'm more of that. I don't want it to be cookie cutter, but it's been a minute since I've done, I would say, a full like creative website
I
project.
understand. Yeah. Yeah.
Honest.
Typically when you get into an e-commerce project, I would say that 90% or 99% of the pages are the same. They're product detail pages,
Oh
right?
yeah,
The rest is
no,
just basically, home category, subcategory. Then you got your terms
it's
of
not
service,
broke,
your
don't
contact.
fix it. Yeah, like if
Yeah.
you know it's going to convert, why mess with it? So but I will say there's one cool tool that I'd recommend if you are working on a checkout process that helps a customer's cart flows, because you can have A/B split testing on the
I've
checkout
worked,
page.
yeah, I've worked on this before.
Really good. You like it?
Yeah. Well, we did a customization for it. It was actually a pain. It's
Yeah.
a customer that
Well,
had
customizing
this.
anyone stuff's kind of hard.
Anything, yeah, but no, but let me just explain though. I mean, it was just not just CarFlow's integration that the WooCommerce store had, but it also had a subscriptions integration, and subscriptions had to be tied in with
Oh
CartFlows
God, anything with
because
subscriptions,
because of
anything.
the start date subscription. So it just
Yeah,
anytime you work with subscription, anyways,
I
it was just
worked
really messy.
I worked with gosh, it was a supplement, Irwin Naturals, and they had a lot of customization with subscriptions, and it was rough, man. Like it just the tokenization, everything that
Yeah,
deals with
yeah,
subscription
no,
product
yeah,
is kind of tough. It
no,
doesn't matter who you're
no,
using or
not
what.
only that, if they're renewing their recurrent subscriptions once or twice a month, one
Yeah.
mistake in the code can cost the customer a lot. So you really,
Oh,
really have to
and
cover
that's
all
the
your tracks.
problem. Yeah, and since you're using open source and you're using someone else's code in most cases, you get nailed for anything that's bad. So it's like it's one of
Yeah,
those. It's a risk. I typically every time I see a subscription job, I kind of just jump over that one and go to the next one. So but that's a really good one. I recommend for that. So and it allows you to do a lot more than the standard WooCommerce checkout design. So I'm gonna give them props for that product.
that stuff looks really, really good. So our process is similar to yours, maybe not so detailed in some of the steps, and I'm happy to show you some of it here as well. I'm gonna have to showcase a couple different projects, and the reason why, and I'll explain this with more detail later, is that after we wireframe, we essentially design over the wireframe, so we lose the
Mine,
wireframe in a way, right?
yeah.
But really, this is what we use to kind of show the customer, hey, this is going to be the
Tell me
structure of
about
your website. Or
the platform real quick. Mine Meister.
oh, MindMeister. I mean, like this is a $70 a year program or application which just allows you to mind map,
That's
right?
cool.
So
I like
so
it.
with this, what the beauty of this is that if a customer is confused as to what they want, you can jump on MindMeister with them, and it's so easy to work that as you start to insert elements and objects, they quickly get it, right? So this is a customer. This is a really interesting customer. They
Yeah, I
are
think
a
this is a good flow.
yeah, they're a company that does rescues in the Bahamas. So if you're in the Bahamas and you break an arm and you need to be brought to the U.S.
Oh
for
my God, that must
uh,
cost
for
some money.
for healthcare, yeah. So it's a subscription based website, right? And it's a brand new concept, right? So they already came to us with a logo. They already came to us telling us kind of what they wanted, right? So we kind of put this workflow together for them based on their budget. There's a lot more we could have done, and there's a lot more we will do if the company is
That's a
successful.
great idea, because that's one of the for especially for retirees going to Bahamas, they're worried about
Sure.
healthcare.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to get bit by a shark and be out there. And here's the thing,
You get bit by
you
a
want
shark,
to.
you're probably gonna die, but yeah.
That's true. Yeah. the thing is this too. Here's what this customer told me, which was very interesting. You don't want to get rescued by an airplane because it's limited where it can land, and there's
Oh,
thousands of islands in the Bahamas, hundreds, if not thousands, rather say, right? And
yeah.
also the conditions may not be there for the airplane to land if it's a seaplane,
Yeah. Choppers
right? If
can, they
it's
can go through some
right,
stuff. Man.
exactly, yeah.
You
A
see
chopper
like
can
the
literally like
rescues, the Coast Guard, like when they're in like a Cat 3 hurricane getting people with the heli. It's like, dude,
it's
gotta
insane.
get
It's
those
insane. It's
guys.
insane. You get anxiety just looking at it.
Yeah.
We are now in the wireframing phase with this customer, right? So again, this is a typical scenario where they have no content
Perfect. Yeah, this is
and
exactly.
they don't know what content to give us, right? So this is sort of what we put together for them, right? That is their their value proposition, the problem they solve, how much it costs, right?
Yeah.
What why it's good, just what I like to call the closers, right? Why it's good that you have this. And
Great.
really what we'll do here is we'll depict the whole entire workflow. And again, this is done in lo-fi because we've already gone through 3 or 4 revisions here. So, there's no reason to jump into design just yet because you're still depicting the workflow, right? This
Yeah.
particular customer is tricky because we're verifying their identity on checkout through a company called
What are
Persona.
you using? You doing
It's
WooCommerce?
no, we're using Persona. We actually developed a custom plugin to integrate with Persona, which we're gonna put out here pretty soon.
Nice. Or where are you gonna put it?
Yeah,
Are you gonna do it your
Uh,
first?
yeah, it might just be free. It's a really basic plugin at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Now the customer is asking for more functionality, which is going to get a little more complex. And we said, hey, that's going to be some scope creep. I don't want to get into that now, but I'll just kind of stick to the wireframe. But this is essentially the whole process.
That's why the
You know,
discovery process and all that's important because you say
that
that's
is correct.
additional.
You
And I
nailed it. That is correct. That's why you want to have everything lined out. Why? Because when you go through a creative process, everybody gets creative and everybody says, oh, we need this and we need that. And you have to be able to say, hey, that is great.
Yeah. And I'll point it out being an agency owner, not if you're just starting out, but agency owner, that's where your project manager is key because they have to be able to be on point when that happens. And there has to be like a good process because that project manager not only has to manage a project well, but they also have to be a salesman a little bit, because they're going to sit there and and go through and say, okay, if we need to
You're
add
right.
this additional
You're
resource,
that is
but
correct.
if you
Yeah.
mess up and say anything like it might be included, oh, it's so hard to go backwards, particularly because you could, like, I could come in. Usually, what happens is they'll say, "Okay, I need to speak to Judd because this should be included." Next thing you know, I got to go on a meeting that I'm not getting paid for to tell the customer, "No, it's not included." And if you look at the discovery and also in our original discussion,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
just vicious.
You have to be careful how you approach it though.
You do, yeah, absolutely. But you know what? There
You do because
are customers that appreciate good work, and those are the customers that we look for.
true,
I've had
true
so many
indeed.
clients
True
that were
indeed. It
just
just
ruthless, not good to deal with, and frankly, when I'm done, I move on. Like I tell them, no, I don't think we fit. And I got to a
sure,
position finally to
sure.
be able to do that. But my heart goes out to a lot of people starting out with, if they don't have a good process, they're dealing with all that crap.
Going back to the memes, you know how they have like
Yeah.
designers just starting out and then like 10
I
years
love the stick
later, and
drawing. It's
it's
just,
like
yeah.
no, it's like the designer today in their 20s just starting out,
Oh,
then
yeah.
designer in their 30s, but they look like they're 50 because it's so much stress, right? Like
I'm trying to
when I
get
tell
that
people like
edited in where they could just show it right now, like the meme, because yeah,
right, right. When I tell
yeah.
people ask me like, what do you do? All I'm a web designer. I have a web design
Uh,
company. We also
I
do
just
applications, right?
I
And
just
and
put
people
out
ask me like,
fires all day and tell people what to do.
right,
I don't
right,
get to do
right.
stuff
And I tell
anymore. What do I
people are like,
do?
oh, people are like, oh, wow, that's so cool, Carlos. I'm like, yes and no. I mean, you
I'm
don't
a
understand.
happiness coordinator.
From a design standpoint, everybody wants to be a designer. From a tech standpoint, things are always breaking. So someone's always mad or angry somewhere.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like that's why I like B2B customers because they're so familiar with stuff just not always working, whether it's an ERP system all the way down to the phone system. They know,
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point.
we're
That's a good point. Yeah, because
we're like
they
a
rely on technology a lot.
like this stuff should just work. And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, the world, yeah, we should
I
have
wish, I
budget
wish.
for the United States as
I mean,
well. But
listen, look at cell phone service. You still have patchy cell phone service, and it's been around for decades, right? You would
yeah,
think by now Anyway,
And,
not to veer off topic, but then
oh,
what I
this
want to
is
show here,
great. Yeah, you
yeah, what I
showed me
want to
this
show here.
on when we were talking before. I love this design. It's awesome.
Yeah, this is actually for a company, and it's funny. This kind of ties into the Bahamas as well, or the Caribbean, but
Yeah,
we are in the East Coast in South Florida, so we do tend to get a lot of Caribbean type projects for some reason.
yeah,
What is it? We just did the booking engine for our cruise line last year,
that's great.
which is Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line, which is now Margaritaville.
There you
But yeah, we
go.
revamped their whole entire
Oh, I wonder
UX
how
UI.
they
That was a
got
huge.
that without being trademarked or
No,
copyright.
no, they've licensed out the brand.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
Oh
say you
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
that's a
it's
God
but
rest
anyway,
his soul. Jimmy Buffett, man. He was
oh yeah, I know.
having cheeseburgers right now, just chilling on
That's
cloud.
true. Yeah. This is more of a website. This is actually a two-phase project. This is a project where you have to develop a front end or a sales website. Then there's a dashboard behind that, which I'm going to show you as well. And I will demo that as a working prototype. But kind of going back to the design process, Judd, just like you, there's desktop, tablet, mobile, right? And again, this allows the customer to understand the asset that they're getting, how their website's going to look before you actually build it, right? It's very, very complex. The reason why is because what this particular client or company does is they will give you a custom weather map for your route. So if you're a captain or you own a yacht or a boat and you're moving your vessel from the Gulf to the Bahamas, you're gonna want to know what the weather is, and that's what this is. This is very
That's
customized,
pretty
granular
cool
wedding.
too. Yeah, I'm only like 90 miles away, or to get to where I gotta go. So I just put the pedal in the metal and get there. but
Right? Yeah, it's
but I know
straightforward.
people
But
that
hey,
will
you
go
still
like
check the
they'll see a
weather.
storm and they're like, yeah, we're just gonna go right through that. And it's like, it needs to be clear skies, and I gotta have 2 hours, man. 2 good hours
There you
to fly
go.
right
There
through
you go.
that shit.
Unless them 2 foot swells, right?
Yeah, yeah. I done 2 to 4. Yeah, 4 foot, sometimes 5, and it was still fine. But I know people that've been out like 10 foot, and it's like the fear of God will come into you, especially if you're, on like a
Oh yeah, I'm
smaller.
sure. Back to kind of the mock-ups. Typically, what we do on on a mock-up design is we'll do the homepage. We'll wireframe the whole entire website for you, right? Because if you want changes, they take no time essentially, right? When we actually get into a full design, we'll just design what we call the homepage and the framework. Framework meaning what your header and your footer are going to look like, what the
Yeah,
color
yeah.
scheme is,
Smaller
and then we'll
sites, yeah.
also do the homepage. Yeah, and if you're happy with that, if you approve that because you like the look and feel, the colors, the font types we've chosen, the images, if you like the style, we'll go ahead and make all the subpage design at that point, right? And then what we'll do is we'll build
Yeah,
a
that's a good
prototype for the
idea. So
customer.
that way you don't go too far into it without
Correct, because they might come back to you and say, "Hey, I don't really like all these subpages because I don't like the homepage." So now you got
yeah,
to go make all these changes.
yeah.
Um, so then what we do to sort of finalize the project, especially if it's a complex workflow, we'll actually create a working prototype for them, right? So what I'm showing you here is the backend or the dashboard for this particular customer. So these are just mock-ups, right? This is
Yeah.
what happens when you log into
You
the
go next,
dashboard for
yeah.
the very first time,
Gotcha.
right? Right. So this is what the dashboard actually looks like. And again, these are just designed from here. The customer can kind of get an idea of what
Yeah,
they're getting into.
looks great.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. From this, it goes off to development, right? Which is that's going to be our next podcast where we're going to
Yep.
discuss development. But yeah, at this point, once everything is approved,
Breakdown for
it
development.
gets yeah, it gets prepped for development. We then what we usually do is again, if it's a complex project, if it's a light project, a lot of times if it's just like a static 5-10 page website, we don't usually do this. But on complex projects, what we'll do is we'll bring the developer and the UX UI designer on the same call and sort of do the handoff,
You
right? Because
guys
the
build like,
project
let's
manager,
say, a architectural deck or something, so they has like the requirements that were asked, and then what you end up with. So any new requirements that you can outline, saying, hey, based on user experience and based on the original requirements, here's what we have, and this is how we're going to build it. before you go into the development side. So I think you find it basically, I see
Oh,
from a
I see.
process,
I see what you, yeah,
finalize the approval of
yeah,
the layout, look and
without
feel.
a doubt. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something that we address on really phase one or phase two, right? We don't just tell you, here, we're going to build it. We're going to
Yeah.
tell you the tech stack so that you know what you're getting, right? So I don't want to come to you and say, oh yeah, by the way, you need an Oracle database to make this work.
Yeah, so I would say then the next podcast we're going to do is going to be reviewing how we execute, I would say, the website and its code. And I think the internal processes we use from tracking and things like that, ticket systems, project tracking systems, how a
There you
developer
go.
might act with a task and a project manager and all that stuff. Well, this is
Yeah.
Judd from Brite Vessel. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. And Carlos
Yeah,
Caneja
so thank you, Mr. Judd from Brite Vessel.
from
It's
Brite
been
Code.
great talking to you.
You gotta say Brite
Sorry,
Code.
Brite Code. Brite,
Pop up that says Brite Code, and then
I
someone
got
can
it. I got it.
put a little thing on it. So
Yeah,
anyway,
it's been another great podcast with you. I look forward to the next one.
awesome. Well, that wraps up part 3, design. Next week, we're going to talk about development. It'll be risk management, scope creep, testing and quality assurance, and going live. Please join us then.